A couple of days ago, Wizards of the Coast announced a new, non-rotating format for Magic the Gathering, Pioneer. In case you haven't heard yet, or just don't know what Pioneer looks like, the announcement came with this helpful infograph. As you can see, Pioneer starts with Return to Ravnica and moves forward through every standard legal set. Now, I'm sure that by the time this video is up, Pioneer will be seeing a ton of play on Magic Online, and I'm sure that the majority of games will be absolutely nuts, seeing as how the only banned cards at this moment are the Khans of Tarkir fetch lands. Not having access to these cards may seem like a big restriction on brewing, but it also ensures that the format doesn't start out with easy and obvious ways to fix any mana base, as well as not supercharging some of the strongest cards from the past 7 years of Magic right out the gate. And while we don't have dual fetches, we do have answers to some of the problems in our mana bases. Fabled Passage, Deathrite Shaman, and Mana Confluence all go a long way to ensuring that playing 3 or 4 colored decks is still an option. There are also cards like Once Upon a Time and the Khans Tri-lands to help smooth things out, but I'd like to focus on Deathrite for just a moment. Deathrite Shaman without fetch lands is obviously worse than with them, but I think this is a great move by WotC. Maybe because he won't be as powerful as we are used to, Deathrite Shaman will get to be a staple of the format without being under the shadow of the Banhammer at the same time. Accelerating on turn 1 with Deathrite won't be a thing in Pioneer, at least not at the outset, and the likelihood of check pile analogs taking over the format is very low, so everyone's favorite 1-mana Planeswalker should be safe for quite some time. So, Pioneer exists somewhere between Standard and Modern, and if we look at those two formats, we find that Modern is in a pretty good place right now. Control, combo, and mid-range strategies are all viable for competitive play, and Standard, while grindy and irritating a week ago, just saw a Field of the Dead banned, and will hopefully shift quickly to being grindy and irritating for other reasons. And while any current Standard deck is playable in Pioneer as of today, the same can't be said for any Modern deck. So let's dive in and check out what Modern decks we will not be seeing in Pioneer, at least for now. Notably absent from any Standard set of the past decade are the Tron lands. Urza's Mine, Power Plant, and Tower push multiple Tron archetypes to the top tier of the Modern format, and without them, any big mana strategies that want to rear their heads in Pioneer will have to rely on normal, actual math to get where they are going. No 1 + 1 + 1 = Karn nonsense. The other major Tron variant, the one that looks to take over the game with spaghetti monsters, is also not going to be making an impact anytime soon. At least not without Eldrazi Temple in the format. And I don't expect that to come back to Standard, well, ever. There are no Storm cards in Pioneer as of yet. Considering the Storm scale is named exactly what it is, I don't see that happening. There's no Past in Flames, nor is there Gifts Ungiven, so combo decks will have to make do with different pieces if and when they show up. They'll also have to make do without cards like Kiki-Jiki the Mirror Breaker and Devoted Druid. In fact, I'm not sure that there is more than one infinite combo in Pioneer right now that requires fewer than 3 cards. If I'm being honest, I don't mind that fact. 2-card combos have been a staple of Modern since Splinter Twin, and being able to avoid more than one of them in this new format is going to be refreshing. Worldwake and Innistrad have both provided some of the best cards in Modern, and those sets not being included in the timeline of Pioneer might not be a bad thing. Nobody will be casting Jace the Mind Sculptor or Liliana of the Veil for the foreseeable future. Snapcaster and Death's Shadow are also out. and even more fair decks will be feeling light without the inclusions of staples such as Bloodbraid Elf or Tarmogoyf. Lastly, Modern Horizons has no impact on Pioneer. Ephemerate, Icefang Codal, Arkham's Astrolabe, Renin 6, and Urza Lord High Artificer won't be seeing any play, and I definitely will not be missing them. That's not even everything missing from Pioneer. We're barely scratching the surface. No Path to Exile or Lightning Bolt means that the only real top tier 1-mana removal spell is going to be Fatal Push. And without fetch lands, even that is going to be a miss more often than not when coming up against big targets. But what do we have? At the jump off, what can we expect? While I haven't gotten to see any Pioneer gameplay for myself yet, I feel like I can make some pretty reasonable assumptions. The copycat combo of Felidar Guardian and Saheeli Rai is sure to be seeing a lot of play this weekend, although I have to wonder how long either of them are going to stick around. Narset, Teferi, and his friend Teferi are all shoo-ins for sure, and will probably become as regular faces in Pioneer as they are in every other format they're legal in. In fact, I'm super stoked to see what the blue-white control decks look like. Not only do they have access to some of the most powerful planeswalkers in Magic, they also get the best mass removal and card draw spells from Return to Ravnica, in the form of Supreme Verdict and Sphinx's Revelation. We also have the best mass removal and card draw spells from Ixalan, in the forms of Settle the Wreckage and Search for Azcanta. On top of these, Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time are also both legal in Pioneer. And make no mistake, these cards are absolute jet fuel, even without fetch lands powering them out in the first few turns of the game. If they stay legal beyond the next few months, I will be shocked. And if drawing your entire deck while Planeswalkers and Sweeper spells control the board isn't enough for you, Control archetypes also have access to Dragon Lord Ojutai. This card commanded its time in Standard, and is sure to demand being answered immediately by the opponent every time it hits the table. For those who prefer their magic quick and painless, Mono Red Burn is always a thing. While Goblin Guide and Lightning Bolt don't exist in Pioneer, Monastery, Swift Spear, and Eidolon of the Great Revel do. So do Ramunap Ruins, Rampaging Ferocidon, Skewer the Critics, and Light Up the Stage. 2 of these cards were banned in their Standard, so it stands to reason that they're more than good enough for Pioneer, even if Ferocidon does end up in sideboards. The top end of the mono red decks are almost assuredly going to end up being Hazoret the Fervent. We can also expect Smuggler's Copter to show up frequently. Actually, I think we can just expect that the Looter Scooter is going to show up in every creature-based strategy in the format. This is another card I don't see sticking around for long. Earlier we saw that Death's Shadow and Snapcaster Mage did not make the cut for Pioneer, but Thoughtseize and Gurmag Angler did, and I can't imagine these 2 not seeing play. Thoughtseize is arguably the best discard spell in the game, and Gurmag Angler is just a 5/5 for 1 mana eventually. These 2 cards pair up particularly well with Grim Flayer, which provides card selection while filling up the graveyard to enable itself, and whatever else your deck might be doing. And maybe whatever else your deck might be doing just might be casting Emrakul the Promised End. Delirium was very real during its time in Standard, enough so that Emrakul was eventually banned. While we're on the subject of previously banned cards being able to help power out giant ethereal monsters, let's talk about Aetherworks Marvel, which also does just that. It already did just that. It got banned for doing just that is how much of that it just did. You don't even need Eldrazi to make Marvel game breaking. especially not when it can be spun the turn it comes into play with support from Attune with Aether, Rogue Refiner, and all of the other energy enablers that are currently Pioneer legal. Still on the subject of game-breaking synergies, Jeskai Ascendancy is a thing you can play, and with Sylvan Caryatid, Retraction Helix, Briber's Purse, and Altar of the Brood in tow, milling your opponent has never been more fun or time-consuming. It sure seems like we're seeing a lot of cards from Kaladesh and Tarkir, and that isn't going to stop now, because Hardened Scales is a card. You should play it alongside Steel Overseer, Hangerback Walker, and Walking Ballista. Sure, Arcbound Ravager has to be left by the wayside, but that doesn't mean you can't roll out our future robot overlords. And when we're all gone at the cold technological hand of Skynet or Ultron or the Phyrexians or whatever, we'll be left with ghosts. Lots of ghosts. You should play these guys. Deny your opponent's spells with Mausoleum Wanderer and Spell Queller, keep your board full with Selfless Spirit and Rattle Chains, and watch tables get flipped when you cheat them all into play with a collected company. Actually, this whole cheating things into play sounds pretty good, so why don't we just do that? Stitcher's Supplier gets Narcomoeba, Prized Amalgam, and Creeping Chill all into the graveyard, where they can each do their own thing for about 2 seconds before they wreck your opponent's life total. There is just so much that Pioneer has to offer when it comes to not paying full price for powerful effects. The only way it could get cheaper is if you just didn't have to play spells at all. Wouldn't that be wild? You are never going to believe this, but that's another thing that is absolutely a thing. Field of Dead may have just been banned in Standard 2 days before Pioneer was announced, and Valakut isn't playable, but Scapeshift is, and we've already seen how strong an army of zombies can be, especially when all it takes to get there is putting lands into play. Honestly, it's starting to feel like Fair Magic just doesn't have a place on this hashtag new frontier, but if it does, it definitely involves rhinos. Lots and lots of rhinos. And probably some dudes that follow clues to get swole, and probably some really aggressive pond scum. Scavenging Ooze fights graveyard strategies and can ease that burning sensation when your opponent is on mono red. Tireless Tracker draws cards while clogging the battlefield, and Siege Rhino does more than any 4-drop has any business being capable of. Geez, there is a lot going on already, and there's no way I can touch on it all in one video. Before wrapping things up, whenever I get to, there are just a few more cards I'd like to mention. Nexus of Fate and Wilderness Reclamation were borderline oppressive during their time together in Standard, and I haven't heard them brought up in any conversations so far. Oko is an obviously powerful card that could easily slot right into a Taking Turns shell. But what happens if your threats or enablers end up in the graveyard? In that case, I recommend making like a Power Ranger and hitting the Megamorph button, preferably on a Den Protector. Need to do it again? Temur Sabertooth is really hard to kill, and can make that happen for just 2 mana. Can you even imagine all of this happening at instant speed? I can. Prophet of Kruphix is hands down my #1 pick for the most underrated card in any and every conversation about Pioneer. And with that, I am going to call it a wrap for this video. I'll be keeping an eye on the format, and am hoping to be able to produce at least a couple of videos each week on the subject, at least while Pioneer is brand new. Though I'm a bit wary of jumping in myself, because I do expect the bans to come fast and frequently. So tell me what you think in the comments below. If you liked the video, click some buttons. They're free to click, and it is super easy. And if you didn't like the video, that might be a you problem, but it's not really my place to say. Hey everyone, Dodge here. Thank you again so much for checking out the video. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, share. Anything that you click on the page other than the thumbs down button is going to help, probably more than either of us reasonably think it will. Again, I appreciate you showing up. I hope all of you stick around for the next one.